Meantime, a landmark in the Edgewater neighborhood on Chicago's north side is taken overnight, and now a plea from two owners to bring it back. No questions asked. CBS 2's Jeremy Ross with more on what it is and why it's so important for those living near it.
This is a very nice area.
You'll find flowers blooming on this Edgewater block.
Yes, there is something missing.
But it's what you won't find.
It does feel like a violation.
That's utterly disturbing to some.
There used to be a small cow.
Someone stole it.
You're kidding. Oh my.
It makes you sad.
I can't believe it. Well, it's unbelievable.
It's kind of a crime of the heart.
Yeah.
Dean Herboshawn and Steve Satek bought a fiberglass cow and calf at an auction, both gracing and grazing the neighborhood for about 8 years. That is, until this past weekend.
They brought professional clippers to do this. This was not cable cutters.
That baby cow, a 50-pound heifer, was heisted. Its estimated value, $700.
It's probably this wide and this tall. It's a life-size calf.
There's a cattle thief in town, yep.
They put up flyers offering a reward. It is the loss of a local landmark, but not Satek's sense of humor.
I'm sort of beefing up the search to find them. This is a bunch of bull.
Pictures show the impact of the swiped steer, a favorite place for neighborhood kids and their parents to gather and play.
Sure enjoyed it. I hope another one comes along.
No, we think he'll be coming back.
Something cute, something innocent.
Yeah, something to interact with.
And it hurts the neighborhood more than it hurts me.
Now, the belief is this is simply a prank, and the hope is the cow will be returned. While police say no one is in custody for the theft, there's no intent on prosecuting the person or people responsible. They just want it back. Again, no questions asked. Live in the newsroom, Jeremy Ross, CBS 2 News, Rob and Erica.
Okay, Jeremy, thank you. Hopefully they'll find it.
Yes, well,
Ticketed without warning. That's the claim from more than a dozen neighbors on a Morgan Park block, what they made earlier today.
they're all angry about parking. CBS 2's Jeremy Ross has this original report with more on why the residents received the tickets and what it's going to cost them.
The cars may have been parked, but hearts raced at 115th and Loomis.
All of my neighbors up and down the block were running back and forth. What are they doing? What are they doing?
Mostly yelling.
How angry were people?
People were very upset.
I'm pretty sure there's everyone screaming in their houses.
No parking warning signs were collected from one side of the street as we arrived. The worker telling us they were posted Friday.
That's grossly untrue.
See any signs Friday?
No.
Didn't see Saturday?
No.
Sunday?
No.
They may have put them on other blocks,
We got no warning.
but there were no signs on this block.
I hold 2 tickets and they're not golden tickets for Willy Wonka right here.
The Veruca salt poured into Christina Love's parking wounds amounts to a $120 fine, $60 per car. Neighbors believe more than a dozen vehicles were ticketed Monday morning. Love says the citations for failing to move for street cleaners were given around the same time as workers secured the signs warning drivers not to park there.
I'm extremely frustrated.
So neighbors were given how many hours, minutes of warning?
Not very much.
This is unfair.
Neighbors are hoping the city will toss the tickets out, adding if their intention was to clean the street, that job's not finished either.
It's up to the city, it's up to the alderman, and it's up to the mayor to make this right.
Streets and Sanitation issued a statement contradicting what neighbors told us, saying, quote, signs were hung on Friday for Monday's sweeping. Now, residents may contest a ticket if they feel that they did not get notice of street cleaning, end quote. We reached out to the alderman for this story. We were told no comment at this time. Live in the newsroom, Jeremy Ross, CBS 2 News. Rob and Erica.
You'd expect some sort of heads up, right, Jeremy? And there's a real disconnect there between what the neighbors are saying and what the aldermen are saying.
And neighbors wanted more of a heads up and got a feeling they'll also want a date in court.
Yes, they'll be fighting this likely. Thank you, Jeremy.
We'll have
Developing tonight in the wake of the terror attacks, travelers to and from Europe are seeing increased security. CBS 2's Jeremy Ross is live at O'Hare with more on their perspective. Jeremy?
Good evening, Mike. Good evening, Jim. Some of the travelers that we spoke with say they didn't really notice a huge difference out there today. Still others we spoke with say they definitely felt a real chill in the air. Some saying that this is simply a new normal when traveling abroad. A select few saying it is just simply a scary time to visit Europe.
But we begin with new disturbing details in a hospital standoff. What we now know about this handcuff, the victim, and the deputy allegedly asleep on the job. Good evening, I'm Rob Johnson.
And I'm Erica Sargent. Earlier this month, armed police swarm a hospital with an escaped inmate holding hostages. Now those nurses turned hostages are suing.
CBS 2's Jeremy Ross picks up our story.
Offender is heading out the ambulance bay with a nurse.
May 13th, Del Norte Community Hospital looked more like a crime scene. 21-year-old Taiwan Salters was treated there for ingesting cleaning fluid and eating his own jail sandal. He escaped from his room, got a gun, and held 2 nurses hostage. His story ends when he was shot and killed by SWAT, but his victim's story continues in a lawsuit.
One of the nurses was repeatedly beaten, she was tortured, and she was raped. The bullet that struck Mr. Salters also struck the nurse in the arm.
Attorney Sean Murray says for 3.5 hours, Salters held a nurse's hair with one hand and a gun to her head with the other. That same nurse called a hero in this news conference. Attorneys say she called and warned fellow workers while leading the gunman to an isolated room.
Her actions that day likely led to many other hospital employees not being harmed.
Attorneys say this is the bed Salters was supposed to be cuffed to, the shackle dangling in the picture. They accuse law enforcement of violating county procedure by not cuffing the 21-year-old at all times, including the time Salters lunged at Kane County Correctional Officer Sean Loomis, taking his gun. Then they say it got worse.
The guard left the room, ran down the hallway into another hospital room, and possibly hid behind a hospital bed.
Attorneys also outline a pattern of law enforcement lapses during Salters' stay, including a Kane County deputy sleeping on the job.
This is something that never should have happened.
Del Norte Hospital releasing a statement reading in part, quote, "The safety of our staff and patients is our highest priority. We are now focused on supporting our employees and implementing procedures to prevent this from happening again," end quote. Kane County Sheriff's Office referred us to the state's attorney's office. The state's attorney said they couldn't comment on this ongoing litigation. Hospital's private security did not respond to our request for comment. Live in the newsroom, Jeremy Ross, CBS 2 News, Rob and Erica.
All right, Jeremy, thank you.
We have breaking news to report to you now.
Good afternoon. I'm Erica Sargent.
And I'm Rob Johnson. Also making news, 9 years in prison. That's the sentence today for a Chicago man who coached his cousin in the murder of a woman at a resort in Bali. The family of the victim, Sheila Von Wiesmack, calls the sentence a step toward closure. CBS 2's Jeremy Ross reports we're seeing the murder weapon for the first time, and he also has the emotional reaction from the victim's family.
We think it's a very fair and just sentence.
These were emotionally taxing steps for a family outside a federal courtroom. The siblings of 62-year-old murder victim Sheila Von Wiesmack summoned the courage to speak to a judge about their loss.
I mean, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I did it, both Bill and I did it for Sheila.
Von Wiesmack's sister and brother described their sense of grief as prosecutors showed the handle of a glass fruit stand turned murder weapon in court. 26-year-old Robert Bibbs reminded the judge he wasn't in Bali August 2014 for the murder, but rather texted those who took part in the killing. Von Wiesmack's then pregnant daughter, Heather Mack, and her boyfriend were convicted by an Indonesian jury of beating, then stuffing the victim's body in a suitcase.
She's up in heaven and she can't speak. And we miss our sister.
In court documents, Bibbs texted advice on how to carry out the murder with all profiting from the 62-year-old's wealth. Bibbs argued Mack was sentenced to a decade and his limited role shouldn't earn him as severe a punishment. Ultimately, the judge disagreed, sentencing him to 9 years.
The sentence of Heather in Indonesia is a joke. She was the mastermind of the murder and she gets 10 years in Indonesia.
Von Wiesmack's brother and sister talked about their unsuccessful attempts to get Heather Mack's child out of prison and into a better environment. They call themselves victims of her plot, adding so is her young daughter. Live in the newsroom, Jeremy Ross, CBS 2 News, Rob and Erica.
All right, Jeremy, thank you.
Meantime,